Welcome back to Fl'AwesomeBlossom. My darling dahlias, mes petits choux, and my precious petals. If you haven't guessed it by now, I'm pretty sure this isn't too far of a logical leap for you. I'm a nicknamer. Yeah, I'm one of those people. I'm more than likely going to assign you a nickname if I meet you. And I've done this in our neighborhood. I've done this in our building. I have done this in various levels of my monkey sphere. In fact, there's a guy in our neighborhood that looks so much like Jeremy Renner, the actor, that we refer to him as Jeremy Renner, despite the fact that this guy's name is Kyle. And it became really funny one day when a lady in our neighborhood was talking to me and said, "Oh my gosh, did you hear about what happened to Jeremy Renner? He got into a horrific accident." Do you remember when Jeremy Renner, the actor, got into that accident with a snowmobile or snowplow or snow something? She says this. I think she's talking about Kyle. And I say, "Oh my gosh, I hope he's okay. Who's looking after Maverick?" And this neighbor's like, "What do you mean? Who's Maverick?" And I said, "It's the dog." And she's like, "How do you know Jeremy Renner's dog?" And it was at that moment that I realized she wasn't talking about Kyle. She was talking about the actor Jeremy Renner. Anyway, nicknames. There's a guy down the hall from us. We've nicknamed him Eyebrows because those are the dominant feature of this man's face. And I'm sure he's a lovely man, probably named George. I don't know. We don't really know our neighbors, even if we love our neighbors. Do we love our neighbors because we don't know them? Anyway, my point is nicknames. We also nicknamed this guy in the building. It wasn't a nice one. A lot of these nicknames are really fun and frivolous, but this one wasn't a nice one. We nicknamed this man in our building, this man who was in his early to mid 70s, tall, lanky, crazy white hair, crazy goatee with the yellowing all around because he smoked both kinds of tobacco, the regular kind and the wacky. Lots of yellowing around here, giant chiclets for teeth, and I kind of looked like a goat. And he was a little bit mean, a little bit gruff, a little bit unapproachable. And so we nicknamed him Billy Goat Gruff. Not the nicest nickname, but it suited this guy. So now I'm going to tell you about my neighbor, Billy Goat Gruff, and how we never knew him and we never loved him, and not at all like Jesus, Yeshua, had suggested. So this story happens in 2020, okay? I lived this story. And when I was first telling this story, I got a lot of mileage out of it. It was really funny, and I made sure to hit all those funny points to make sure that I got all the laughs. But now as I tell it with my conviction in Christ consciousness, now I see how sad this story really is. So this happened in 2020, right? It's October of 2020. We can all agree, those of us who were cognitively aware during this time, it was a wild time to be alive in 2020. We have gone through the lockdown. It's October. We're coming close to cold and flu season, and there was division everywhere. Maskers, anti-maskers. We weren't quite at the vaccination level yet, but things were ramping up. It was a crazy time to be alive. And I think a lot of people at the beginning of the lockdown, we were all checking in on each other. And then we all just sort of got into our own minds, our own problems, our own thoughts. And we were forgetting about everyone else, just locked away in our homes. It was 2020 was noted for me because I knew it was a wild time. I knew it was really crazy. And even though everybody in my family, except my mother and my husband, completely forgot about my birthday, I didn't actually get too upset about it because it was a wild and crazy time. So I'm like, yeah, everyone's like got stuff going on. But anyway, September of 2020, I get off of the strata council of my building. I was on it. It was depleting my resources, my limited energy, and I quit being on council. In October, it's a day off for me. I'm going out with my dogs and I run into a neighbor, Elsie. She's on the top floor. And she recognizes me as someone who is on council, and she approaches me and says, hey, you know, I wrote a letter to council, I wrote a complaint letter, and nobody has gotten back to me. And I had to say, oh my gosh, like, I know you don't know this, but I've stepped down from council. However, I will be a good neighbor, and I will email Strata Council, and I will let them know that you sent this complaint and that it's been a week and no one has responded to you. And so I do that. And I feel really good about being a good neighbor and doing that. And then a few weeks later, I run into Elsie again. And it's exactly the same. It's a 2.0 conversation. Aren't you on council? I sent a complaint. And I said, oh, I did. Like, did no one get back to you? She's like, no. Do I have to write a second letter? No one's gotten back to me. I saw you. You said you were going to. Did you? And I said, oh, I did. I sent that off. And I was hoping someone would reply to you. And so to be a really good neighbor, right in front of her, I take out my phone and I text the Strata president and I say, this lady has made a complaint. You know, this is the second time I've run into her. You haven't responded. Can you please get back to her? And then she tells me, yes, I hope someone gets back to me soon because the smell is unbearable. Okay, that's the first time I've heard anything about what her complaint could possibly be. So there is a smell. And I make a few assumptions. At our AGM meeting in the spring, the Strata president let it be known to everybody who attended the AGM that we have a hoarder in our building. Now, they didn't disclose what floor they were on, what unit number, anything like that, but people knew that there was a hoarder. So when this resident told me that the smell was getting bad, I just assumed that she was being impacted by the hoarder. So I sent off that second email and I just, carried on with my life. I figured Strata's going to take care of it. She'll be taken care of. I don't know what they're going to do with the hoarder to help out this situation, but, out of my hands at this point. I feel like I did my good neighborly thing and leaving it alone. Now, November comes along and we have 2 dogs. At this point, we have Harley, who is a Staffordshire Terrier, like a pit bull. And he had advanced cancer in one of his legs, in his back leg. He was on his way out. He was 13 years old. He was old. He was cancerous. And it became a challenge to sort of coax him to come out for walks. And in the month of November, it was really hard to get him out. It seemed like he was not wanting to leave the apartment at all. It was hard to convince him to come. And if we did get him up and out of his bed and into the hallway, he would start to shake and he'd pull really quickly to get to that elevator. And I just assumed it was because he was old and sick and probably in pain. And he just wanted to get the walk over with. Just wanted to go out, do his business, come around and come home. At the same time that we had Harley, we had Watson. And Watson was just 1 year old, our little Wheaton Terrier. And Watson was a crazy Wheaton, like they all are. Very friendly, very goofy little dogs. And in November, Watson's behavior started to change a little bit too. A little bit peculiar. But I am looking at my dogs, but I am not seeing my dogs. I am hearing some of the things that they're doing, but I'm not really listening to what's really going on. So when Harley would come out, he would shake. He'd want to get to that elevator. When Watson would come out, he'd want to go the opposite way, down the hall, away from the elevator. And I just assumed he wanted to go see Unit 204 because in that unit is a giant Tibetan Mastiff named Hector that Watson loved. Every time he would see Hector, Watson would flop on his back and be like, Hector, here's my belly. And he just loved Hector. And Hector just sort of put up with Watson. He was a gentle giant, that's for sure. But in November, Watson would come out. He'd make a break down the hall, right, as far as his leash would let him, towards Hector's unit. And then he started adding these weird, peculiar things. He started standing up on his hind legs and looking up at the ceiling and with his suitor in the air doing this little ballerina twirl. It was adorable. And I just assumed he's trying to get up on his hind legs to smell the space where Hector was. I'm not paying attention that Watson's in the middle of the hallway and not pointed at Hector's door. Oh well, November. A lot of that. Near the end of November, both dogs were whimpering as we were coming out of the unit. And I just thought, Harley's whimpering and then Watson's responding, you know. He's just singing the song of Harley's people. I thought he was just joining in. Fast forward to Wednesday, December the 9th. We are coming home. My husband and I are coming home from the last walk of the evening. It's around 10 o'clock at night. It's minus 2 degrees centigrade, and we stop in the lobby to check our mail. My husband's collecting the mail, I'm hanging out with the dogs, and I notice this giant, fat, fuck-off housefly that is just circling above Harley. And Harley's looking at it, and this thing's circling real slow, and then it lands right on Harley's snout. And it was so fat and so slow that when it landed on my dog's snout, I swore I heard it. I wave my hand towards the fly, fully expecting it to fly away, and it does not. Instead, it stays there, and I have to flick this thing off of Harley's snout. When I do that, the fly doesn't fly. It just, again, falls on the ground, and I swore I heard it. I lose my mind. I absolutely bombard my husband with all the factoids that I know about a housefly. And his response was like, wow, thanks, nerd, for that David Attenborough response and information on the life cycle of a fly. Why are you mad about this? And I explain, the fly shouldn't be alive. The weather, it should be too cold. He's like, yeah, but we're inside. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That means the hoarder's out of control. There's something in this building that is allowing flies to breed no matter how cold it is outside. This is crazy. So I'm really angry. But, you know, we come upstairs. The dog serenade is on. Harley whimpering. Watson doing his weird ballerina and adding a little woo, 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 woo to it. You know, so we quickly get the dogs inside of our unit. And in fact, that night, Harley was so insistent on getting in. He booted Watson out of the way to get into the condo first in a very much, you know, if you're not first, you're last situation. And at first we were really dismissing Harley's behavior. We just thought he didn't want to go because he's old, sick, and tired, and he didn't want to give up his bed. He was worried that maybe Watson would steal it from him. Now fast forward to December 11th. It's a Friday, and it's my day off, except in the morning I'm doing administratia. So I'm going to get up, I'm going to get a good start to my day, and I take the dogs out at 6:30 in the morning. And as I'm leaving the condo, down the hall is Hector, much to Watson's delight. Watson is so happy to see Hector. And I gotta tell you, in this moment, like in the 1 minute before this thing happens, it's just crazy. When I come out, I notice there's Hector, there's Brian, his owner, this Scottish guy from Aberdeen who's about 5'8" and maybe 155 pounds if I am being generous. And he's the owner of Hector, this Tibetan Mastiff, who is an enormous dog. And that dog weighs at least 125 pounds. And what I see is Hector sitting in front of the condo door, pushing himself back into Brian. And Brian is behind Hector, crouched down. Somehow he has his foot extended and holding open the door of his condo unit. And simultaneously he is shoving or trying to shove this enormous dog who does not want to go. He's trying to shove this dog into his condo unit. But because I come outside with Harley and Watson and there's like a little bit of chaos and Watson gets very excited, Hector gets distracted. And in that moment, Brian yells out, "Get inside, you wee bastard!" And he shoves Hector in, taking advantage of Hector being distracted by Watson. And he just shoves the dog in. The condo door slams shut. And so now Hector's inside his unit and Brian is in the hallway with me. And I'm like, "What's going on, buddy?" And he says, "This dog has been driving me crazy all morning." All morning? It's 6:30 in the morning. What's all morning? So then Brian tells me in his beautiful Scottish brogue that Hector woke him up around like 4:45. And Brian assumed Hector was having some sort of digestive disruption because Hector was pawing at the closet door in the bathroom, or excuse me, in the bedroom. And I know that Brian's unit and our unit are the same. So in the bedroom, there is a pass-through closet that goes from the bedroom into the bathroom. And there are doors on either side of the closet. For us, in our home, we keep both these doors closed. Brian kept the closet part door to the bedroom closed, but always had the door open from the bathroom. I guess that's how we access the closet. I don't know. I don't care. The point is, Hector is pawing at the closet door, not going out the open bedroom door out into the living room to go to the front door. So Brian just assumes Hector's gone mental. He opens the closet door. Hector goes through the bathroom, out into the living room and to the front door, and now is pawing like mad at the front door. Brian gets dressed, takes him out, and is fully expecting some sort of explosive diarrhea or some sort of crazy thing happening. But no, they just go for a nice, lovely little walk around the neighborhood. Hector comes back in with Brian, but when they get up to the second floor, Hector starts to put on the brakes. He doesn't want to go to the unit. And Brian had to drag him. And then he was basically, that's when I came out, where he was trying to get him in the unit and Hector was refusing. So I said something like, well, maybe Hector needs a bigger walk. Like, do you want me to take him out with my guys? And he's like, no, I got a lot of work to do. Today's a day off. I'm going to decorate my place from tip to toe in Christmas. And Brian then explains to me that he had been married to a woman who did not celebrate Christmas. Hector has never seen Christmas, and Brian is determined to have a lovely Christmas he got his own artificial tree. He's got all these bubbles. He's going to put his Christmas music on, and he's going to have a great time decorating for Christmas. Great, buddy. You know what? Me too. I'm in the middle of Christmas decoration too. You go have a great time. I took the dogs. I go for a walk, and then I come back, and Harley and Watson are now very vocal. Really vocal. And I just think, maybe they're just hoping to see Hector. And I notice that Brian's door is open and that there is a towel coming out from his unit into the hallway. And I think, oh, poor Hector. He's had his digestive upset. Oh, well, don't want to clean that mess up. And I go into my unit. I do my paperwork. I have my lunch. And at 1 o'clock, I take the dogs out again. And again, it's the same thing. We come out and both dogs are really vocal. And I'm like, my goodness, like this is nuts. Brian's door is still open. The towel is still there. Whatevs. And I take the dogs for a 90-minute walk. When we get down into the lobby to go out for our walk, there are half a dozen police officers waiting at the front door. I let them in. I ask, what are you here for? And the lady said, we're here for the 3rd floor. And then I notice the coroner's van is there and there's a gurney being wheeled up. And I'm like, oh no, someone's died. Oh, rat, someone died on the 3rd floor. Oh man. Oh dear. Yeah, go ahead. And honestly, there was a part of me that was secretly hoping they were there for my floor because we had a criminal that was living at the end of our floor. And I was really hoping they were there for the 2nd floor, but they were. But they weren't. They weren't there to arrest that guy. I go for my walk and I come back 90 minutes later. There are no police there anymore, and I am watching the coroner's van drive away. When we come into the front door, I am hit in the face with a smell. And now it is a smell that I had not smelt before, and knock on wood, I have not smelt since. But I can tell you, my brain knew exactly what it was. Human decomposition. Yeah, it was putrid. And it's a primordial smell. It's something I think your brain instinctively knows. It was disgusting in the lobby. We get into the elevator and I almost threw up because of course they had to take the body down through the elevator. Ugh, gross. We get upstairs, and now I see that there's a hazmat team. People in the whole Tyvek back, like full-on suits, masks, the whole 9 yards, gloves, like, it's like E.T. It's like that scene in E.T. There's a bunch of people going back and forth. There's a fan being set up in the hallway. And I'm like, what the heck is happening? Out from his unit comes Brian with a backpack, a suitcase, and Hector. And Hector's got his great big stuffy in his mouth. I said, oh my gosh, what's going on? He goes, oh, I'll tell you what's going on. All right, sorry, that was my Scottish attempt. Brian tells me that the dog went really crazy. Like when I went back inside my unit, that Hector was trying desperately to get out. He was kept pawing at the front door, going into the bathroom, crying. He was just carrying on. And Brian told me the story like this. I figured the dog was upset about all the Christmas, about the artificial tree, about all the bubbles, about the Chrissy music I had on the radio. I figured the dog's a critic, so I turned the Chrissy music off. And that's when I heard it. A drip, drip, drip. And I said to him, what do you mean a drip, drip, drip? And he said, yeah, I went into the bathroom. I investigated the toilet, the tub, the sink. Nothing's dripping. Went to the kitchen. No problem. He goes, I'm walking around. And then I stepped on it. And there's nothing for it. There's only one word for it. And it was goo. And at this point, I lose it. I'm laughing. And he's like, oh yeah, laugh it up. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You stop being funny and I will stop laughing. Oh, I apologize to all the Scottish people out there. That was my attempt. I'm very sorry about the accent, but please know it was absolutely hysterical listening to Brian in his Aberdeen accent tell me about this. So what had actually happened is that Billy Goat Gruff, in a very Billy Goat Gruff kind of move, he took all of the groceries up from his car. He didn't go back for that second trip. He was determined to take all 10 of his grocery bags up in one go, even though something like that could cause an older person to have a heart attack. He did that. He took all of his groceries upstairs, and that's exactly what happened to him. He had a heart attack when he got in, and he managed to close his door but never lock the door, and he dropped dead, and all of his groceries were all around him. His unit is underneath Elsie's unit, so Elsie was smelling the rotting food of the rotting groceries for the first week until week number 3, when the smell of human decomposition was added to the smell of rotting vegetables and fruit and meat and sour milk and all of that. And our dogs were reacting to the fact that this man died the last week of September. And then his body was there in his unit by himself for 47 days before he was discovered. Oh, excuse me, 57 days. 57 days he was there. So almost 2 full months. No one phoned this man. No one was missing this man. No one noticed that he wasn't around. I mean, I kind of noticed that I hadn't been seeing him because I parked my car near him. But even that, it was getting near, it was November. I don't know. I knew he was retired. And this is the thing. He was estranged from his wife, estranged from his children, retired from his job. So no one's phoning like, hey, Bob didn't show up to work today. And this man had no friends. He was Billy Goat Gruff. He was a gruff individual. And this is why Yeshua told us to love our neighbors, because that man, you can't know. We don't know if that man really was a bad person all through and through. He seemed a bit gruff, but I didn't think he was that mean. I didn't think he was die alone and no one notice for 2 months kind of guy. And this is why Yeshua is telling us to love our neighbors, because he knows we're going to have neighbors like Billy Goat Gruff. And that's when it's the most important to notice, not to just look at what's happening, but to see what is happening, to notice. So it used to be funny. It used to be funny that my dogs were doing these things, that Brian had this reaction, that Hector was doing this funny thing. And it used to be funny that this guy was wrestling with his Christmas lights and that his Christmas tree was outside. The guy that died, Billy Goat Gruff, his Christmas tree was on his balcony and he was in the midst of detangling Christmas lights. Yeah, in September when he died. Yeah. And those were plugged in and they stayed plugged in for 6 entire months. It was nuts. There's more to that story, like more sadness, but the main point I'm trying to take away here is, I want you to take this away. Do you know your neighbors? Do you look at them or do you see them? Are you noticing if they're not around? I'm not asking you to make moral judgments on your neighbors. I'm just asking you to be open to the fact that they are human beings, and acknowledging them as such is really one of our key tenements of life, right? The golden rule. Treat others how you would like to be treated. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And that's why it's repeated so many times in the Bible, because it's hard. And Yeshua has never promised that the Christ-conscious path was going to be easy, right? Narrow is the path. But, man alive, I'm going to go take my dogs out in the neighborhood. And since this incident, I have made a lot more efforts to be more open, more approachable, and just sharing a little bit more in our neighborhood and paying attention to the people in our neighborhood. I hope that you get out there today, but whatever you do today, my darling dahlias, mes petits choux, my bourgeoning buds, I hope that you live your life in full-on Fl'awesome Blossom. You'll see me next time.